in the opulent glow of crystal chandeliers that ceiling of the Grand Regency Ballroom, a sea of silk gowns and tailored tuxedos swirled in rhythmic elegance, their laughter echoing like distant thunder. Amid this whirlwind of wealth and privilege, Elena Ramirez moved like a shadow. Her tray balanced precariously on one hand as she navigated the crowd, her worn black uniform a stark contrast to the shimmering opulence around her. But tonight fate twisted its knife when Alexander Voss, the infamous billionaire whose empire spanned continents and whose arrogance was as legendary as his fortune, locked eyes on her from across the room, his smirk cutting through the air like a blade. With a casual flick of his wrist, he summoned her over not for a drink, but for a dare that would shatter the evening's facade. "Dance with me, waitress," he proclaimed loudly enough for the nearby guests to hush. "Or are you too clumsy to keep up with real grace?" The room held its breath, waiting for her humiliation. But little did they know, Elena's feet carried secrets buried deeper than any fortune could buy. If you believe in the power of kindness and second chances, hit that like button. Drop a comment below sharing your own story of unexpected redemption. Share this video with someone who needs a reminder that hearts can change. And don't forget to subscribe to Kindness Speaks for more tales that touch the soul and inspire the spirit. Elena's hands trembled slightly as she set down the tray, her mind racing back to the life she had once known, a life far removed from the drudgery of serving champagne to the elite. Born in a modest neighborhood on the outskirts of New York City, she had been a prodigy of the dance floor from the tender age of 5, her tiny feet tapping out rhythms that seemed to echo from her very soul. Her parents, immigrants who had sacrificed everything to give her lessons at the local community center, watched with tears in their eyes as she twirled through competitions, her body a vessel for emotions too profound for words. Ballet, salsa, contemporary, she mastered them all, her movements a blend of fire and fluidity that left judges speechless. Scholarships poured in, and by 18, Elena was on the cusp of stardom, accepted into the prestigious Juilliard School, where dreams were forged into realities. But life, that cruel choreographer, had other plans. A devastating car accident claimed her parents' lives one rainy night, leaving her alone with a mountain of medical bills from her own. Injuries, a shattered ankle that doctors said would never fully heal. The scholarships vanished like smoke, swallowed by the need to survive, and Elena found herself trading point shoes for practical sneakers. Her days filled with endless shifts at diners and hotels, her nights haunted by the ghost of music that once lifted her. Alexander Voss, on the other hand, had never known the sting of loss or the weight of want. Heir to a tech conglomerate that revolutionized artificial intelligence, he built his fortune on ruthless acquisitions and boardroom battles where mercy was a weakness. Tall, with chiseled features and eyes like polished steel, he commanded rooms with a presence that bordered on intimidation. His arrogance a shield forged from a childhood of isolation in sprawling mansions, where nannies replaced parents and success was measured in zeros on a balance sheet. Relationships were transactions to him, fleeting and forgettable. And tonight's gala, a charity event for the arts that he hosted more for tax benefits than altruism, was just another stage for his dominance. Spotting Elena, with her quiet efficiency and the subtle grace in her step that hinted at something more, ignited a spark of boredom-fueled mischief in him. He had seen her type before, the overlooked, the underpaid, the ones who faded into the background. Daring her to dance was meant to be a joke, a way to amuse his circle of sycophants, but as she hesitated, her dark eyes meeting his with a flicker of defiance, he felt an unfamiliar pull, a curiosity that unsettled his carefully constructed world. The orchestra struck up a waltz, its melody weaving through the air like a siren's call, and the crowd parted slightly, forming a loose circle around them. Elena's heart pounded in her chest, a drumbeat of fear and fury mingling into something electric. She hadn't danced in years, not since the accident that left her limping through life. Her dreams crumpled like the wreckage of that fateful car. The pain in her ankle was a constant companion, a reminder of what she had lost, and the thought of exposing herself to ridicule in front of these strangers, people who saw her as nothing more than a servant, twisted her insides. Yet there was a fire in Alexander's challenge, a dare that echoed the taunts she had faced in her youth from those who doubted a girl from the barrios could rise. Swallowing hard, she stepped forward, her hand extending tentatively toward his, and as their fingers touched, a spark jumped between them, unseen but felt, like the first note of a symphony long silenced. The dance began awkwardly, Alexander leading with the confidence of someone who had taken obligatory lessons in his youth, his steps precise but mechanical, devoid of soul. Elena followed at first, her movement stiff, her body protesting the unfamiliar strain, the old injury sending sharp warnings up her leg. Whispers rippled through the crowd, snickers from the elite, pitying glances from others, as she faltered slightly on a turn, her face flushing with the heat of embarrassment. Alexander's smirk widened, his voice low and mocking as he leaned in, but Elena's mind drifted to memories of her mother's encouragement, the way her father would clap along to her practices in their tiny living room. Something shifted then, a dam breaking within her, and she closed her eyes for a moment, letting the music seep into her bones. Her posture straightened, her feet found their rhythm, and suddenly, she was no longer following, she was transforming the dance. As the waltz swelled, Elena's body came alive, her steps evolving from hesitant to hypnotic, infusing the rigid structure with a passion that Alexander had never encountered. She spun with a grace that defied her injury, her arms arching like wings ready to take flight, her hips swaying in subtle counterpoint to the melody. The crowd's murmurs turned to gasps as she led him now, her energy pulling him into a vortex of emotion, his arrogance cracking under the weight of her authenticity. Alexander stumbled slightly, unaccustomed to being outshone, but instead of anger, a strange admiration flickered in his eyes. Elena's face, usually etched with the weariness of survival, softened into something radiant, her pain transmuted into power on the dance floor. The ballroom seemed to hold its breath, the chandelier's light catching the sweat on her brow like diamonds, and for those watching, it was as if a hidden star had burst forth from the shadows, illuminating the superficiality of their world. But the triumph was fleeting, for as the music crescendoed to its peak, Elena's ankle gave way, a sharp agony shooting through her like lightning, forcing her to clutch Alexander's arm to steady herself. The spell broke, the crowd erupting into applause mixed with confusion, and Alexander, for the first time in years, felt a pang of genuine concern rather than conquest. He helped her to a nearby chair, his hand lingering on her shoulder longer than necessary, his voice uncharacteristically soft as he called for assistance. Elena waved it off, her cheeks burning not from exertion, but from the vulnerability exposed, the reminder that her body was broken, her dreams deferred. She slipped away into the service corridors, her heart a tumult of exhilaration and sorrow, leaving Alexander standing amid the resuming chatter, his world tilted on its axis by a woman he had dismissed as inconsequential. In the days that followed, Alexander couldn't shake the image of Elena's dance, the way her eyes had blazed with unspoken stories, the raw emotion that had pierced his armored heart. He used his resources to find her, discreet inquiries at the hotel, a trail leading to her cramped apartment in Queens, where she lived paycheck to paycheck, supporting a younger sibling through college, while nursing her own unhealed wounds. Guilt gnawed at him, an unfamiliar intruder in his life of excess, and he realized his dare had been more than a jest. It had been a revelation of his own emptiness. Elena, meanwhile, replayed the night in her mind during her shifts, the applause a bittersweet echo that stirred long-buried longings. Her ankle throbbed worse than before, a physical manifestation of the emotional upheaval, and she wondered if opening that door had been a mistake, inviting pain back into a life she had learned to endure. Driven by a compulsion he couldn't name, Alexander sought her out at the diner where she worked mornings, his sleek limousine looking absurd parked among the rusty sedans. He entered quietly, taking a booth in the corner, and when she approached with her notepad, recognition dawned on her face like a storm cloud. He apologized then, not with grand gestures but with halting words, admitting his arrogance had blinded him to the humanity in others. Elena listened, her guard up like a fortress, years of hardship teaching her that men like him offered promises as fleeting as fog. Yet there was a sincerity in his eyes, a crack in the facade that mirrored her own vulnerabilities, and against her better judgment, she agreed to coffee after her shift, a tentative bridge over the chasm between their worlds. Their conversations unfolded like a slow dance, each meeting revealing layers beneath the surface. Alexander shared fragments of his isolated upbringing, the pressure to succeed that left no room for failure or feeling, how his empire was built on conquests that filled bank accounts but emptied his soul. Elena opened up about her parents' accident, the way grief had anchored her to survival mode, her dance dreams gathering dust like forgotten trophies in her closet. Challenges mounted as they grew closer. Alexander's business associates scoffed at his interest in a common waitress, whispering warnings of gold-digging scandals, while Elena's friends cautioned her against the heartbreak of unequal worlds, reminding her of the power imbalance that could crush her spirit. Suspense built in stolen moments, a midnight walk through Central Park, where he confessed his fears, a quiet dinner where she taught him basic dance steps, laughter mingling with tears as old wounds surfaced. The turning point came during a stormy evening when Alexander invited her to his penthouse, not for seduction but for solace. As rain lashed the floor-to-ceiling windows, Elena found an old record player in his study, and with tentative encouragement, she slipped on her hidden point shoes, the ones she hadn't worn since the accident. Pain shot through her as she rose on point, but she pushed through, her body remembering the language of movement, and Alexander watched in awe, his heart swelling with an emotion he had long denied: love. He joined her, clumsy at first, but willing to learn, their improvised duet a metaphor for their budding connection. Imperfect, raw, and profoundly real. Yet doubt crept in. Elena pulled away, fearing his world would swallow her identity, while Alexander grappled with vulnerability, his arrogance a habit hard to break. Months passed in a whirlwind of emotional highs and lows, the narrative of their lives intertwining like vines. Alexander began to change, diverting his fortune toward art scholarships for underprivileged youth. Inspired by Elena's story, his boardroom decisions tempered with empathy. Elena, bolstered by his support, sought physical therapy for her ankle, rediscovering her passion through teaching dance at community centers, her struggles transforming into strength. Suspense peaked when a tabloid scandal erupted. Photos of them, together, splashed across headlines, labeling her an opportunist and him a fool, testing their bond to its core. Elena considered fleeing, the weight of judgment echoing her past losses, but Alexander stood firm, publicly defending her at a press conference, his voice breaking as he declared her the true wealth in his life. In the end, they returned to the Grand Regency Ballroom, not as challenger and challenged, but as partners in a grand waltz of redemption. The same crowd watched, this time with genuine admiration, as Elena led a performance fundraiser, her dance a testament to resilience, Alexander by her side not as a billionaire but as a man reborn. The applause thundered, emotions cresting like waves, leaving everyone, including the once arrogant tycoon, forever changed by the power of a single, daring step. Before we wrap up, I'd love to hear from you. Comment below with the line, "Kindness dances in unexpected places," if this story reminded you of the beauty in second chances. If this tale of arrogance melting into empathy, of hidden talents bursting forth, and of hearts finding rhythm in chaos, has touched your soul and left you feeling inspired or deeply moved, please show your support by liking this video, sharing it with friends who could use a dose of emotional uplift, commenting your thoughts on what moved you most, and subscribing to Kindness Speaks for more stories that celebrate the human spirit in all its vulnerable glory.